This is Nick Thompson with Demand Lane. We're here at MTMP at the Bellagio. I'm sitting here with Brandon Bogle from Levin Papantonio. We're going to go over a couple of things. This is the first in our series of I need big marketing on there. So just a little bit about us. We are a vertically integrated case acquisition company. We work directly with law firms. We do all of our own marketing. We have 7 media buyers on staff. We do not purchase things from anybody, no third party. We utilize our own internal call center. And so we just try to keep it in a very closed and clean ecosystem. Again, sitting here with Brandon Bogle from Levin Papantonio. Brandon, I'm going to kick it over to you. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Obviously, everybody knows Levin Pat, but this is your time to do a little plug, and we'll jump right in.
Yeah, first of all, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today and chat about what we do, chat about how we interact with other law firms in the marketing space, especially. I've been Levin Papantonio for 15 years. I'm a shareholder at the firm. I focus most of my practice on drug and medical device litigation. And our firm more broadly focuses in the product liability space to include drug and device, but also environmental and other toxic exposures. Our firm recently celebrated our 70th anniversary, so we've been around.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We've been around for a long time, and been doing this conference now for 25 years as well. Mass Tort's made perfect. So, if there's a major product liability litigation going on out there, we're typically involved in it. And if we're involved in it, we're typically involved at a leadership level because we like to, if we're involved, to put our sort of fingerprint on the case if at all possible. So yeah, that's a little about me and a little about firm.
Awesome. Yeah, familiar with Levin Pat as everybody is. Known Pat for a long time. Worked with Kim Adams and Bobby Blanchard for the years. So again, thank you. So again, first kind of entry into our marketing partner. So that's going to be the first question: is how do you vet and choose a marketing partner to work with?
Yeah, I think I always approach this business as being one that's founded on relationships. And we talk about marketing partners. I think exactly the same way. I want to, number one, look for someone that I feel like is a good long-term partner. I think it's a mistake to bounce around among marketing partners if you can avoid it. I think it's really good to find someone that you gel with, someone that you can communicate well with, because that's, again, when we're talking about relationships, the most important piece is that two-way communication. What are my needs as a law firm, and how can you best, suit those needs? And sometimes you have to make tweaks, right? I mean, maybe you have a sense at the outset of what you want, and you start seeing cases come through, and you realize, oh, okay, this looks a little different than what I thought. So let's pivot. And so I really look for some in a marketing partner, someone who's very communicative, sort of heads issues off at the pass before they become major issues. And just someone that you can trust, because in this business, trust is paramount. And so when I find someone that meets sort of all of those criteria, that's someone I want to work with long term. And again, I really encourage people, once you find that partner that really fits what you're looking for, stick with them, because you're probably in the right place.
Awesome. Love that. That's kind of my philosophy too. Like, just do the right thing. And if you do the right thing, people are going to work with you, right? So I love that. So over the course of time, I'm sure you've had, you've learned some lessons, right? There's been some good, probably been some bad. What are the do's and don'ts that you've learned along the way?
So I think that there's several. One is, if you're not sure whether, a case is going to ultimately produce the kind of volume that you think it may, such that you really want to be involved in it, test the waters a little bit. And again, this is where communication comes into play. Don't be afraid to put a little money out there, test the waters, and see what you get. But communicate with your marketing partner on, a weekly or sometimes even daily basis when you start those campaigns, and see what you get. And, if it's not working out, you can always pull the plug and pivot somewhere else. But I think, one thing that I've really learned is you've got to be aggressive in this business. And so if you think you've got something, you've probably got something. Right. And if you've probably got something, you need to move on it. And so I think, if you sit and wait for others to test the market for you, you typically suck. So I like to be a front runner. If there's a case that I see that I think I like, I'm going to move on it, test the waters, see what's out there. Again, with a trusted partner in the space, and see what we generate. And you can always pivot, but don't be afraid to jump in the waters for everything. I think the people that succeed in this business are often the ones that do that.
Awesome. Yeah, love that. It's to kind of echo your point. Communication in any relationship is fine, and so we absolutely embrace that and probably over communicate, but never had anybody say, you know what, you're reaching out too much on a campaign, right? Like you have to be able to tweak, update, and be able to be agile and pivot. And that's, I think that's one of the things that the demand lane hangs their hat on. And then secondly, to your point, completely agree with you. Fortune favors the bold. So you see something, go get it. So kind of looking at a campaign, you've been running it for a little bit, you've invested some money into it. What tells you that a campaign is truly successful? What are the key markers on the front end that are going to show success on the back end of the campaign?
So I think what I really try to look at is what do I think reading the team leaves an average case in this litigation is worth? And then I work backwards from there. Because we may have a certain Mass Tort where, $1,000, $2,000 a case is great. Other cases where you nice to have, I don't know. So you look at the volume that's out there, but you really, the biggest factor to me is what do I think the average case is worth? And then I sort of go backwards from there as to what sort of investment from a marketing perspective I would want to make with a loose understanding of that valuation. But the other important thing is always be willing to revisit that valuation, right? There are times where in a drug case, you get a label change from the FDA. Okay, well, that may create greater certainty that I've got a real case here. Well, that may drive up my valuation right there. You may have another scenario where you value the case in a certain way. There's a new study that comes out that calls into question what you thought about that case. All right, well, I want to reassess that valuation, maybe take it down a 10. And then once you do, all right, is the spin that I'm making here, is it now still justified? So don't be afraid to be flexible in that space to reassess that valuation. But to me, I always start with any sort of campaign or any litigation with what are these cases worth on an individual basis. And it's more of an art than a science, right? You never get to that exact number, but you can usually get a ballpark. And the good thing about our firm is we have a lot of experience in Mass Torts. And so there's almost always a comparative Mass Tort that you can look at to say, what did that case pay? And let's use that as a metric for what this one may pay. And then you kind of drive it up or down from there based on that initial evaluation. But to me, that's the truth.
Absolutely. That echoes one of my philosophies too. Whenever I look at any problem, whether it's a campaign, it's a case, heck, it might be with my kids. Like, what is the outcome that I want? And then work my way backwards from there. So one of the things that you said really struck a chord with me. So when we look at campaigns, we do evaluations as well, right? We look at what is the potential claimant group, right? And is this a realistic number that maybe that Brandon wants, right? Like, I don't know if we can generate it for that. So we do a lot of homework on the front end too, and we try to pick winners, just like you do. So to that point, things happen. Might have a label change that comes out, but also on our side, it might cost more to start generating, or not to start generating, but to continue to generate after a campaign starts, because the game event like MTMP, somebody gets excited, everybody goes in on it, it drives the price up for everyone. And so how do you work with your partners on that? Because your marketing partner also has things that they're working on, and they need to make sure that this makes sense for them as well. So how does that work?
Yeah, I think that the first thing, I think we touched on this a little bit, I really look for a marketing partner that doesn't oversell. If this is necessarily a sales related business, but the marketing partners that I try to avoid are the ones that oversell. So I want somebody that's going to be always transparent and realistic about what it truly is willing to cost. That's one reason I'm here today with you. I appreciate that about you, that you're transparent about that kind of information. And then again, you sort of reassess with your marketing partner, how are the values looking on a daily and weekly basis, and that still makes sense for each side involved in the relationship. And again, sometimes you have to pull the plug. Sometimes you get to that point where you say, okay, this is not what I was looking to spend. Nick, I appreciate you being transparent with me about that, but it just doesn't work to get through one. And maybe sit out for a little while because I've found sometimes the numbers can fluctuate up and down. You hit a peak like Mass Tort's main program where the numbers go up, but that doesn't mean they're always going to stay there, right? Sometimes they can creep back down, and maybe you just need to be opportunistic and then communicate with your partner about when to jump back in. And so I think that's a lot of it too. Don't assume that just because you've hit, that sort of artificial cap you set for yourself, cost wise, that's always going to be at that level or higher. Sometimes it can take back down.
Absolutely, and we truly appreciate that from our end too, because it to the point the costs can rise. It ebbs and flows, right? And so some weeks it's going to be perfect, some weeks it's not. But as long as we have that open dialogue, I think that's super important, and that kind of goes back to the communication side of this. So, great segue. What campaigns are you excited about to finish out the year, and then also going into 2026? Sex abuse has been kind of the hot topic here at this show, but is that a hot topic for you?
It is, and I think specifically the Roblox cases are big right now, and I think really a burgeoning litigation. One that we expect to be, heard by the J.P. Mill here pretty shortly, and obviously that can take us different directions on whether we get an NDL there or not, and certainly that's something to watch. So I definitely would put that one on the radar for the rest of this year and probably creeping into next as well. Another one that I think you should be looking out for is Depo Pereira. We've had some mixed success getting those cases. I think that we may be getting to a point where there are fewer out there who are available. But I will say this, Judge Rogers there in Pensacola in my backyard, she moves her cases. And so another thing to this point that I look at is, what is the overall life cycle on this case? Is this something that's going to be a land war in Asia that's going to take 10 to 12 years? Or is this something that maybe I can flip in 2 or 3? And so I like Depo Pereira for the latter reason. I think it's a case that, there's the major preemption issue that's been argued. And so we'll see where that goes, crossing our fingers, obviously. But if that goes in our favor, we know we've got a known commodity in that judge that will move her up. So she's going to kick sometimes both sides, kicking and screaming to a resolution. Sure. And so I always look for that too. And so I think that even though in that litigation, there may not be as many viable cases still out there, I would still keep it on your radar largely because of those reasons.
Awesome. And are there any others? I know you and I have chatted about Dupixent a little bit. Can you talk about that? What that looks like for you and for Levin and what that can look like for the industry?
Yeah, Dupixent is another case that we're doing. In all candor, again, going back to transparency, we haven't seen a ton of those cases in the marketing that we've done so far. They do involve cutaneous T-cell lymphoma, so a very significant, severe disease, which again is another thing to look for in our business is, what does this look like from a damages perspective? And those cases are very severe as it comes to that. So we've seen some decent volume there, but not the sort of heavy volume I would expect in a Roblox type case, for example. But again, look at what the cost is versus what you think that case is worth. I have liked so far how that sort of equation has shook out for us. And so we've stayed involved in that case. But it's one that you have to understand that you're going to get probably a few intakes a week, not hundreds. And so to know that going into it, and it is a case I think to consider as long as you're comfortable with that sort of dynamic.
Absolutely, yeah. The plaintiff pool for Dupixent is not as large, right? But on the flip side, talking about Roblox or perhaps institutional sex abuse, there's no shortage of perpetrators in this country. Unfortunately, it's true. So can you talk a little bit about institutional sex abuse, in particular, California, women's detention centers and juvenile detention centers?
Yeah, that again is another burgeoning area and one that we're looking at. I know a lot of other firms are as well. And I think, quite frankly, it just highlights a very unfortunate trend in this country of litigations, and quite frankly, it's reflective of our society, I think, as well. So those cases, when it comes to the Roblox cases or the institutional cases, we also have done some cases involving children's detention center related programs. We've done some of those as well with some success. That is a burgeoning area. And I think those are all examples of places that we should be looking at.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it's been the hot topic. Substance abuse has been the hot topic here at MTMP. And it's one that we here at Demand Lane take very seriously, and we're working diligently on Roblox as well as institutional sex abuse. Brandon, I had just a little bit more time on this. Just want to kick it over to you. Is there anything that you would like to share about MTMP in general, industry in general, as 2025 closes, going into 2026? Is there anything that we might be able to help you with?
Yeah, so I think one thing that I would consider that I didn't mention earlier is anyone looking to spend their own money to try to get in and collect different cases in various litigations. I always tell people when they initially do that, sort of view this the same way you view your investment portfolio generally. I like to have the short-term investments, one that I think might pay in the next year or two, the medium-term investments, and then your longer term. Maybe it's going to take 5 or 7 years, but I'm willing to sit on the sidelines and wait for this one. And as long as you sort of stagger your marketing spend in that way, I think you avoid some of the troughs that necessarily come with the Mass Tort business. And so I always encourage lawyers that I'm talking to think about your marketing spend the same way you would your general investment portfolio. And as long as you go into it with that perspective, the people that we work with on FAR do very well with this. But again, I think if you just look at that long-term investment, you might be waiting a while to get to the point where you're feeling good about what you've done. Sure. So kind of put it in different buckets. And I think risk is another way to look at it from the same perspective. There are some cases, nothing's a slam dunk in our business, but there's some that you can look at from a science perspective or just where they're at in the case and how mature it is and say, that one's almost a sure thing. Yeah. Others where you say, this is a real roll of the dice. We're in Vegas, and that's the appropriate reference. And those are good too. Yeah. But I think you have to, again, know what you're getting into. And I always recommend people sort of spread their portfolio out in that respect. And again, here at Mass Tort Made Perfect, one of the things that I think our firm offers to people is we can help you with that assessment. We can help you identify the cases that, hey, this is a long shot, but if it pays, it's going to pay big. Or, hey, nothing's guaranteed. This one is pretty close. Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that we try to offer. I think we do a pretty good job of offering people that come here because sometimes you walk into these conference spaces and it can be overwhelming. The number of litigations going on, issues in those litigations. And I think, it's really important for lawyers to have a trusted partner on the lawyer side to help them distill that information so then they can take it to a marketing partner and say, all right, I've talked to Levin, Papantonio. They're saying these 3 cases are ones to look at. What can you do on that? And how can you make that work for them? And I think when you have those sort of information combined with a trusted relationship, you can really make things happen.
Awesome. Love that. Yeah. I mean, this is a relationship business, right? And that starts with defenders that you might be working with, all the way up to full counsel, and then all of the information we're making. So, one last thing, I'm just going to give you the floor. How can folks get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm available. My email address is bbogle@levinlaw.com. So my first initial, my first name and my last name, Bogle. I'm available on email there. Google us at levinlaw.com, and you'll find me and all of our other attorneys as well. And I and 20, 25 of our other lawyers are available here at Mass Tort Made Perfect twice a year. And again, always available by phone or email otherwise, and always happy to communicate with our brethren on the plaintiff side to help further justice. I mean, that's what we're here for at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Well, Brandon, thank you for being the first guest on our soon-to-be recurring podcast. Very much appreciative of your time, Levin Papantonio's time, and our relationship with the firm. So, absolutely appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
You okay? Yeah.